Hello everyone, this is our chapter 7 of level 1 Ecology. Ecology gives us a holistic perspective about the biological understanding of how organisms, while remaining an individual, interact with other organisms and physical habitat as a group and hence behave like organized wholes, population, community, ecosystem, or even as the whole biosphere. Ecology is concerned with four levels of biological organization: organisms, population, communities, and biomes. And there are certain key elements or factors that lead to variation in the physical and chemical conditions of different habitats. Those key factors can be of two types: abiotic factors and biotic factors. Ecological niche. Each organism has an invariably defined range of conditions that it can tolerate, diversity in the resources it utilizes, and a distinct functional role in the ecological system. All these together comprise its niche. Types of population interactions: mutualism. Symbiosis is mutually beneficial to both organisms involved. Example: oxpecker, a kind of bird, and the rhinoceros or zebra. Oxpeckers land on rhinoceros or zebra and eat ticks and other parasites that live on their skin. The oxpeckers get food and the beast get pest control. Competition. Competition is an interaction between organisms or species in which both the organisms or species are harmed. The limited supply of at least one resource, such as food, water, and territory, used by both can be a factor. Example: cheetah and lions. Both species feed on similarly prey. They are negatively impacted by the presence of other because they will have less food. Predation. It is a form of ecological relationship between two organisms of unlike species in which one of them acts as a predator that captures and feeds on the other organisms that serve as the prey. In ecology, predation is a mechanism of population control. Example: lion and zebra, bear and fish, and for fox and rabbit. First one is predator, second is prey. Parasitism. It is a relationship between species where one organism, the parasite, lives on or in another organisms, the host causing it some harm, and is adapted structurally to this way of life. Example: tapeworms, fleas, and barnacles. Commensalism. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Example: the cattle agreed and grazing cattle in close association, a sight you are most likely to catch if you live in farmed rural areas, is a classical example of commensalism. Commensalism: one species is harmed whereas the other is unaffected. Example: the bread mold Penicillium commonly grows on any bread that has passed its shelf life. This mold can produce penicillin, which destroys many of the forms of bacteria that would also like to grow on this bread. It is this understanding of the bacteria killing properties of penicillin that led to the use of it as an antibiotic medicine. Penicillium does not benefit from the death of other bacteria. Ecosystem. An ecosystem can be visualized as a functional unit of nature where living organisms interact among themselves and also with the surrounding physical environment. The ecosystem varies greatly in size, from a small pond to a large forest or sea. The components of the ecosystem are as shown in the diagram below. Component of ecosystem. Ecosystem is of two types: abiotic component and biotic components. Abiotic are climatic factors and edaphic factors. Climatic factors are rain, light, wind, and temperature. Edaphic are soil, pH, minerals, and topography. Biotic component, producers, consumers and decomposers. Consumers are of four types: primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary consumers. Abiotic components, non-living. The abiotic components can be grouped into the following three categories: physical, inorganic and organic. Physical factors: sunlight, temperature, rainfall, humidity and pressure. They sustain and limit the growth of organisms in an ecosystem. Inorganic substances: carbon dioxide, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, water, rock, soil and other minerals. Organic compounds: carbohydrate, proteins, lipids and humic substances. They are the building blocks of living systems and therefore they link the biotic and abiotic components. Biotic components, producers. The green plants manufacture food for the entire ecosystem through the process of photosynthesis. Green plants are called autotrophs as they absorb water and nutrients from the soil, carbon dioxide from the air and capture soil energy for their process. Consumers, they are called heterotrophs and they consume food synthesized by the autotrophs based on food preferences. They can be grouped into three broad categories: herbivores like cow, deer and rabbit feed directly on plants. Carnivores are animals that eat other animals, and omnivorous organisms feeding upon both plants and animals like human beings, pigs and sparrows. Decomposers are also called saprotrophs. These are mostly bacteria and fungi that feed on decomposed and the dead organic matter of plants and animals by secreting enzymes outside their body on the decaying matter. They play a very important role in recycling nutrients. They are also called detrivorous or detritus feeders. Functions of ecosystem. Ecosystem are complex dynamic system. They perform certain functions like energy flow through the food chain, nutrient cycling. These are also called biogeochemical cycles, ecological succession or ecosystem development, homeostasis or feedback control mechanisms, ponds, lakes, meadows, marshlands, grasslands, desert and forest are example of natural ecosystems. Many of you have seen an aquarium, a garden or a lawn, etc. in your neighborhood. These are man-made ecosystems. Ecosystems are classified as follows: natural ecosystem, dependent on solar radiations, example forest, grassland, ocean, lakes, rivers and deserts. They provide food, fuel, fodder and medicines. Ecosystems are dependent on solar radiations and energy subsides such as wind, rain and tides. Example tropical rainforest, tidal estuaries and coral reefs. Man-made ecosystem dependent on solar energy, agricultural fields and aquaculture ponds. Dependent on fossil fuels, urban and industrial ecosystems. Ecosystem function, energy flow through ecosystem. Food chain and energy flow are the functional properties of ecosystems that make them dynamic. The biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystem are linked through them. Food chain, transfer of food energy from green plants through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten is called a food chain. Example, grasses, grasshopper, frog, snake, hawk or eagle. Each step in the food chain is called a trophic level. In the above examples, grasses are first and the eagle represents the fifth trophic level. During this process of transfer of energy, some energy is lost into the system as heat energy and is not available to the next trophic level. Therefore, the number of steps is limited in a chain to 4 or 5. This is the diagram of food chain. Following trophic level can be identified in a food chain: autotrophs. They are the producers of food for all other organisms of the ecosystem. They are largely green plants and convert inorganic material in the presence of solar energy by the process of photosynthesis into chemical energy. The total rate at which the radiant energy is stored by the process of photosynthesis in the green plants is called gross primary production. This is also known as total photosynthesis or total assimilation. From the gross primary productivity, a part is utilized by the plants for its metabolism. The remaining amount is stored by the plant as net primary production, which is available to consumers. Herbivores, the animal which eat the plant directly, are called primary consumers or herbivores. Example, insect, birds, rodents and ruminants. Carnivores, they are secondary consumers if they feed on herbivores, and tertiary consumers if they use carnivores as their food. Example, frog, dog, cat and tiger. Omnivores, animals that eat both plants and animals. Example, pig, bear and man. Decomposers, they take care of the dead remain of organisms at each trophic level and help in recycling the nutrients. Example, bacteria and fungi. There are two types of food chains. Grazing food chains. This start from the green plant that make food for herbivores, and herbivores in turn for the carnivores. Detritus food chains. This start from the dead organic matter to the detrivorous organisms, which in turn make food for protozoans to carnivores, etc. In an ecosystem, the two chains are interconnected and make a Y-shaped food chain. These two types of food chains are producers, herbivores, carnivores, and producers, detritus and carnivores. Food wave, trophic level in an ecosystem are not linear, rather they are interconnected and make a food wave. Thus, the food wave is a network of interconnected food chains existing in an ecosystem. One animal may be a member of several different food chains. Food waves are more realistic models of energy flow through an ecosystem. The flow of energy in an ecosystem is always linear or one way. This is the diagram of food wave. Ecological pyramid. Ecological pyramids are graphic representations of trophic level in an ecosystem. They are pyramidal in shape and they are of three types. The producers make the base of the pyramid and the subsequent tiers of the pyramid represent herbivore, carnivore and top carnivore levels. There are three types of ecological pyramids. Pyramids of number. This represents the number of organisms at each trophic level. Example, in a grassland, the number of grasses is more than the number of herbivores that feed on them, and the number of herbivores is more than the number of carnivores. In some instances, the pyramid of numbers may be inverted. Herbivores are more than primary producers, as you may observe that many caterpillars and insects feed on a single tree. Pyramid of biomass. This represents the total standing crop biomass at each trophic level. Standing crop biomass is the amount of living matter at any given time. It is expressed as gram per unit area or kilocalorie per unit area. In most terrestrial ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass is upright. However, in the case of aquatic ecosystems, the pyramid of biomass may be inverted. Example, in pond, phytoplanktons are the main producers. They have very short life cycle and a rapid turnover rate. They are rapidly replaced by new plants. Therefore, their total biomass at any given time is less than the biomass of herbivores supported by them. Pyramid of energy. This pyramid represents the total amount of energy at each trophic level. Energy is expressed in terms of rate such as kilocalorie per unit area, unit time or calorie per unit area per unit time. Energy pyramids are never inverted. Biodiversity is a term popularized by the sociobiologist Edward Wilson to describe the combined diversity at all levels of biological organization. The most important of them are genetic diversity. A single species might show might diversity at the genetic level over its distributional range. The genetic variation shown by the medicinal plant Rauwolfia vomitoria growing in different Himalayan ranges might be in terms of the potency and concentration of the active chemical that the plant produces. India has more than 50,000 genetically different strains of rice and 1,000 varieties of mango. Second is species diversity. The diversity at the species level, for example, the Western Ghat have a greater amphibian species diversity than the Eastern Ghats. Third is ecological diversity. At the ecosystem level, India, for instance, with its deserts, rainforests, mangroves, coral reefs, wetlands, estuaries, and alpine meadows, has a greater ecosystem diversity than a Scandinavian country like Norway. Pollution. It is an undesirable change in physical, chemical, or biological characteristics of air, land, water, or soil. Agents that bring about such an undesirable change are called pollutants. To control environmental pollution, the Government of India has passed the Environment Protection Act in 1986 to protect and improve the quality of our environment. BOD, biological oxygen demand, is the amount of dissolved oxygen needed by aerobic biological organism to break down organic material present in a given water sample at a certain temperature over a specific period. The BOD value is most commonly expressed in milligrams of oxygen consumed per liter of the sample during 5 days of incubation at 20 degrees centigrade and is often used as a surrogate of the degree of organic pollution of water. Biomagnification. It refers to an increase in the concentration of the toxicant at successive trophic levels. This happens because a toxic substance accumulated by an organic cannot be metabolized or excreted and is thus passed on to the next higher trophic level. This phenomenon is well known for mercury and DDT. Eutrophication. It is the natural aging of a lake by nutrient enrichment of its water. In a young lake, the water is cold and clear, supporting little life. With time, streaming draining into the lake introduce nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, which encourage the growth of aquatic organisms. As the lake's fertility increases, plant and animal life burgeons and organic remains begin to be deposited on the lake's bottom. Over the centuries, as silt and organic debris pile up, the lake grows shallower and warmer, with warm water organisms supplanting those that thrive in a cold environment. Marsh plants take root in the shallows and begin to fill in the original lake basin. Eventually, the lake gives way to large masses of floating plants, bog, finally converting into the land. Types of pollution. Air pollution, when harmful or excessive quantities of substances including gases, particulate matter and biological molecules are introduced into Earth atmosphere, then we say that the air in our surroundings is polluted and hence air pollution has happened. Various air pollutants are carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxides, volatile organic compounds, particulate matters, toxic matters such as lead and mercury, CFCs, ammonia, radioactive pollutants, etc. Diseases, asthma, lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, COPD, leukemia, pneumonia, etc. Effects of air pollution. Greenhouse effect. It is the process by which radiation from a planet atmosphere warms the planet's surface to a temperature above what it would be without its atmosphere. The greenhouse effect is a natural occurring phenomenon that is responsible for heating of Earth's surface and atmosphere. In this, the sun's warmth is trapped in the lower atmosphere of the planet due to the greater transparency of the atmosphere to visible radiation from the sun than to infrared radiation emitted from the planet's surface. Greenhouse gases in the order of decreasing contribution towards global warming, CO2, methane, CFCs, etc. Photochemical smoke, it is a type of smoke produced when ultraviolet light from the sun reacts with nitrogen oxides in the atmosphere. It is visible as a brown haze and is most prominent during the morning and afternoon, especially in densely populated warm cities. Cities that experience this smoke daily include Los Angeles, Sydney, Mexico City, and many more. Acid rain, it is a rain or any other form of precipitation that is unusually acidic, meaning that it has elevated levels of hydrogen ions. Low pH, it can have harmful effect on plants, aquatic animals, and infrastructures. Acid rain is caused by emission of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide, which react with the water molecules in the atmosphere to produce acids. Water pollution occurs when harmful substances, often chemicals or microorganisms, contaminate a stream, river, lake, ocean, aquifer, or other body of water, degrading water quality and rendering it toxic to humans or the environment. Causes: water is uniquely vulnerable to pollution, known as universal solvent. Water can dissolve more substances than any other liquid on earth. That is why water is so easily polluted. Toxic substances from farms, towns, and factories readily dissolve into and mix with it, causing water pollution. Waterborne disease, dysentery, arsenicosis, polio, trachoma, typhoid, cholera, diarrhea, malaria, lead poisoning, E. coli, hepatitis A and E, like dysentery by bacteria, arsenicosis, groundwater contamination by chemicals containing arsenic, polio by virus, trachoma by bacteria, typhoid fever by bacteria, like this. Noise pollution. Noise pollution is generally defined as regular exposure to elevated sound levels that may lead to adverse effect in humans or other living organisms. Elevated sounds include traffic noise, construction noise, workplace sounds, etc. According to the World Health Organization, sound levels less than 70 dB are not damaging to living organisms, regardless of how long or consistent the exposure is. Effect of noise pollution on human health: hearing loss, cardiovascular diseases, psychological impacts, etc. Radioactive pollution, it is the deposition or presence of radioactive substances on surfaces or within solids, liquids or gases where their presence is unintended or undesirable. Various radioactive pollutants like alpha, beta, gamma radiations, radioactive decay, nuclear power, plant radioactive residues, etc. Disease caused due to radioactive pollutant, cancer, tumors, genetic mutations, etc. To date, the top most radioactive places on Earth include like Japan, Chernobyl, Ukraine, the Washington, Brazil, etc. So, how is ecology related to biology? What are the 5 levels of ecology? Who is the father of ecology? What is food chain and food web? And what is meant by biochemical oxygen demand, BOD? So, we will meet tomorrow again in our next lecture. Thank you.